Welcome back to my top 100 board game series. This is part 5, numbers 60 to 51. And if I was single, these are the only games I would keep in my collection, so that it appears I have a modest and healthy relationship with my hobby. I'll put the rest in storage and lead a double life where I visit them in secret, but it'll be worth it to be loved for being someone I'm not. Let's get to the list. And number 60 is New Angeles, in which you get to play as a selfish corporate dickhead. It's set in a futuristic dystopia. It's actually in the Android Netrunner universe, and you each play as one of the mega corporations that are effectively running the city of New Angeles. Your goal is to make as much money as possible, but the interesting thing about New Angeles is you're each given a hidden objective. You need to be richer than your rival. So you're dealt a rival at the start of the game, and that is one of the other players in the game. As long as your corporation ends up with more money than their corporation at the end of the game, you win. And what that means is that multiple players can win this game, as long as they are all richer than their rival. It's such a brilliant premise. It feels so completely different from any other game. And it makes for a really interesting negotiation game. You don't mind giving some extra money to that player and that player because they're not your rival, as long as maybe they pay you back later on. But you're just desperately trying to not help your rival, make sure that they don't profit from anything that's going on, but in a way that you don't give it away too much and they realize that they're your rival. As corporations, you're trying to milk this city for all it's worth. You'll be producing resources that will make you cash. And you're striking deals. This is the heart of the game, that one player will suggest a deal, something that changes the game state or benefits some players but not others. And then another player can make a counteroffer. And then you'll be bidding with action cards as to which one of these offers you want to go with. Which way does this vote go? And then as the player pushing one of these deals, you'll be desperately trying to negotiate with the other players, give them money, favors to get them to vote for yours, because that's going to benefit you. These have a huge impact on the game, but you don't want to give away too much money because that's your victory point. And these deals can also impact what's going on in the city, because the people of New Angeles are not happy with what you guys are doing. And things are getting pretty desperate. You've got organized crime, you've got activists trying to stand up for human rights, and you've got like a military police that are clamping down. And if there's too much of kind of bad stuff happening in different parts of the city, then people will start an uprising. They will go on strike. These are all things that you're trying to avoid. And the reason you're trying to avoid it is because there's a chance you can all lose the game. If you push it too far, you're too greedy, then the federal government will step in and take back control of the city, and you lose the game. Except if you're the Federalist, because one player may have a secret hidden traitor role. They want the government to step back in. They don't want the corporations to control this city. And so they are trying to sabotage everything from within. Once again, it's a brilliant premise because you are naturally being selfish. You want to have more money than your rival. So you're always thinking about how you can rinse this city dry. And yet in the back of your mind, you're thinking, are we doing too much? If I do this and then someone else does that, is it going to push it over the edge and we're just all going to lose? I love that dynamic, and it's such a clever political simulation. I don't have any game that feels anything like New Angeles, which is why it stayed in my collection for so long, and yet it's one that's almost impossible to get to the table because you need 5 or 6 people, and when I've played it, it goes like 4 or 5 hours long, and you need people that are willing to negotiate and to get into this kind of game, which I find to be a rare thing. So this isn't a game I play a lot. There's a chance that I will just get rid of it because I'm never getting to play it, but I do love so many aspects about it. And yet I'm not fussed about the theme. I'm not a Android Netrunner fan or particularly like a sci-fi fan, but there's something about the way they create this world and the thematic purpose of everything you do in it. It just so perfectly builds that narrative that I buy into it completely. This one's out of print. I would love to see it come back, maybe in a slightly shortened version. I feel like it was really unfairly overlooked at the time. For me, it's one of the most interesting negotiation games I've ever played. I do love that genre. This isn't the highest up in my top 100 by any means, but if I got to play it more, I feel like it could be much higher up because the games I have had of it have been so memorable. And number 59 is Ticket to Ride. This was my entry into modern board games. About 14 years ago, my wife bought me this for Christmas, and this was the first game I fell in love with, and the rest is history. The idea is you're trying to create train routes across this map. So at the start of the game, you're given some objectives. I need to get from Zurich to Brindisi. And so to do that, I need to be placing my color trains onto the board to connect up routes. And to be able to place trains onto the board, I need to collect these colored cards. So on your turn, you can either collect cards from the ones available, or you can play cards that you've already collected to be able to place trains on the board. And each of the spots on the board is colored. So to be able to go from Budapest to Zagreb here, I need 2 orange cards. I get to place my trains down. So if I complete an objective, I get points for it at the end of the game. If I don't complete it, I actually get minus points for it. Because throughout the game, you can collect extra objectives, but you get punished for being too ambitious. So you've got to sort of decide, how much can I achieve? What I love about the game is you're all getting in each other's way. There's only so many spaces on the map where you can place your trains. So if you don't get them down early, someone else might take the route that you need, and now you're going to have to take the long way round. And there's just this really interesting decision of how quickly do you race to get your stuff down? Because if you go early, people are then going to know where you're trying to go. They're going to start freaking out, and they're going to try and block off the places that you also need, like beyond where you've already placed. But of course, if you don't go early, that's just leaving the space open for someone else to take it, and now you don't have it anymore. So it creates this immense tension. Turns can go quite quickly. You're just picking up cards and the next person's picking up cards. But you can see what colors they're collecting. You can see where they have trains already on the board, and you're just desperately hoping that the colors come up that you need, because you can feel that that space is going to go any minute, even if it actually isn't. That's what it feels like. It's such a great introductory game because it's so obvious how to strategize. You're given your objectives at the start of the game. You know what you need to do. It's just, what route do you choose to take? Are you going to try and connect up your objectives all with one path? And then you just look at the board and see what colored cards you need. That's what you're hoping for. And then when it comes to your turn, you've got to decide, do you take cards from here because there's some colors that you're going to need available right now? Or do you get your trains down on the board before someone takes those vital spots? It's such a great example of a modern board game. You've got quick turns, simple rules. You know that the game isn't going to take forever because you're racing to get your trains down. As soon as someone has all their trains on the board, the game ends. The only reason it isn't further up my top 100 is it can still feel like this quiet, insular game. You're very much focusing on your own thing, even though there is this shared player area. And I just typically prefer games with more interaction and a bit more discussion going on. And I don't use it as much as a gateway game if I'm sort of introducing people to games, because I like to offer like 3 different smaller games in one night so you get a sense of what they're into. Whereas if you're going to play Ticket to Ride, it's going to be a bit longer, and so you don't get that variety. But still, it's a masterpiece of design, and one that I would recommend to anyone looking to buy their first board game. And I've got so much to thank it for getting me started on this hobby. And number 58 is Clank, which, as the subtitle says, is a deck building adventure game. You have an adventurer that you are sending into this dungeon to try and get as much loot as possible. But the trouble is there's a dragon there trying to protect their gold and artifacts, and if you make too much noise whilst you're in this dungeon, you will get killed by the dragon. The game is one big push your luck decision, because the deeper into the dungeon that you go, the better stuff you will get. So if you can make it all the way to the bottom and get this 30-point artifact, then great, that would really help you win the game. But the longer you spend in the dungeon, the more likely you are to die at the hand of the dragon. And if you die in the dungeon steps, you are out. You cannot win the game. You get 0 points. If you die above ground, then you might be alright. And if you can actually escape the dungeon entirely, then you get some reward points for doing that. So there's this just decision of how long do you stay in there? can you actually get to the good stuff? And if you can, will you actually make it out alive? And it's just such a brilliant push and pull, because other players can actually escape the dungeon whilst you're still at the bottom, and that will speed up the game, increase the dragon attacks, and make it more likely for you to die. But really, what's going to determine whether you die is how much clank you make. This is the name for noise in this game, and certain cards that you play will make clank. You actually start with 2 in your deck, so you can't avoid making noise. And every time you do, you will add a cube that ends up in this bag, and then when certain cards are revealed from the deck, the dragon will attack, and you will draw cubes from the bag. And if it's your color, that's health points that you have now lost. If you draw enough of those, that's it, you're dead, game over. There are ways to heal, but there's also ways to make less clank. So you just want to be really careful with how many cubes end up in this bag, because this is how you die. And it's just a really fun, dramatic thing every time the cubes get pulled out, because most of you will be on the verge of death. And there are some black cubes in there that don't affect any player. So you're all just desperately hoping a black cube comes out. And just watching each cube get drawn, it just adds a lot of tension to this game. It's one of the most entertaining things about it. The way you do anything in the dungeon is with your hand of cards. So if you want to move to another space, you've got to play a movement card. And you can improve your hand of cards by building your deck. You can spend these skill points to buy cards from the display that go into your deck, and they'll get shuffled and come up into your hand. And then you get to do more movement, or you get to buy even better cards. The deck building makes the game really intense because you will be desperate to draw certain cards at certain times. If you're on the verge of death and you need to get above ground before the dragon kills you, then you're desperately hoping that you get a movement card in your next hand. But if you've built up this deck with loads and loads of cards and there's not enough movement cards in there, then you might end up not being able to do it. And it's literally the matter of life and death. And that's why I like Clank over other deck building games. It still has the strategizing of building your deck, trying to pick cards that synergize well with each other, thinning out your deck so that it's more effective. But then you introduce the threat of the dragon attacks and the frustration of not being able to move when you want to. It just makes the game so much more dramatic and entertaining for me. And number 57 is Just One, which is like the definitive party game. If someone was to ask me to recommend them a group game that you could play with anyone, I would always turn to Just One. It's a word guessing game that you play cooperatively. One player has to guess a word, so they can't see this card, but let's say they've been assigned lawyer, then the other players each have to write a clue on their whiteboard in secret. They can write one word, and then before it gets revealed to the guesser, they reveal it to each other. And if anyone's written the same word, so here, 2 people have written solicitor, then they get wiped out. They do not count towards the guesser's clues. So now they're left with what's available. They look at what they've been given, and they get to make one guess to guess what the word is. And if they get it right, great, that's a point for the team. And if they don't, well, tough luck, and you're on to the next player. The fact that clues will cancel each other out if they're the same makes this game, because as the clue givers, you are really trying to think around the houses, come up with a word that no one else will write. Or you write the obvious thing because everyone else is trying to be not obvious, and maybe you'll get away with it this time. But the further away you go from the obvious clue, the less likely it is that your word is actually going to help the guesser. If everyone's written stuff that's very much off on a tangent, they just look at these words that don't even seem connected, and they can't find the common denominator. And for such a simple game, it's so good at delivering you these little moments, like when you reveal your clues to each other and you're desperately hoping that you haven't written what someone else has. And if you have, you're absolutely gutted that you're not going to get to contribute. Then you're really worried that the guesser only has like 3 words to pick from, and are they going to get it? And you're just all kind of sat there in silence waiting for them to say something. And when they do say the right thing, it's such a relief. And as the guesser, there's this pressure on you with 5 people all looking at you. You look at these words that don't make sense, but you just got to give it time, let it percolate. And usually it will click, and it feels amazing when you get it. But if you have to make a wild guess and it wasn't obvious, that usually means you got it wrong. I find this game to be so addictive, and groups just want to play and play and play. You don't even really count the points because every round feels like its own mini game and you just want to win each round, and so you can kind of just play endlessly. It's such a great team builder because you're all in it together, and it's so easy to get up to speed with. You just play one round and you immediately know, so this is how I need to play this game. And you're getting that positive feedback from the game so quickly when you win a round, or you get a guess correctly, or even when you just come up with a clue that hasn't matched with anyone else and you just feel really good about it because it really contributed to your team winning that round. On an objective level, I don't think there's a party game that's better at delivering than Just One. And it used to be further up my top 100. I think just over time I've played it so much that I'm not as excited to go back to it as I used to be. And for me, there are other word guessing games that are more complicated, probably not as good as party games, but I just get more from. So that's why they're further up my list. But as one that I would recommend to people, and one that will just never leave my collection, Just One is perfect. And number 56 is Sons of Anarchy: Men of Mayhem, which is an epic game of negotiation and organized crime based on the TV show Sons of Anarchy. But you don't need to know the TV show, you just need to know that you play as a motorcycle gang and you are trying to make as much money as possible from this town as you can, whilst the other players and their motorcycle gangs are getting in your way. In essence, it's a worker placement game. You send your workers to a location to do something. Here, I'm at a gun shop and I can either buy some guns or sell some guns for even more money. The trouble is everyone else wants to do those actions as well, and if someone else sends their gang members to the same location, then you've got to have a fight before you can work out who gets to use it. You calculate your strength, roll some dice, and one of you will get to use the location. But you could also use some guns in that fight, and if that happens, then one of the gang members is going to the hospital. They might end up dying. And if you use guns, you're going to attract the attention of the police. There's this heat tracker, and the more heat you have from the police, the less contraband you'll be able to sell on the black market. Even though it might seem like a really aggressive game, you actually want to fly under the radar. You want to be a legitimate business. You don't want to get into fights. You don't want to attract the attention of the police because that's all going to make things a lot harder for you. So it might be in your interest to just pay someone a bribe so that they don't come to your location. I love that it's such a free-flowing negotiation game. You can give contraband money and guns to any player at any time. You can make promises, you can break promises. So if someone's getting into a fight that I'm not involved in, I could just give one of the players a gun so that they use it in that fight to create some chaos. Because if they're getting at each other's throats, killing each other off, then that just makes life easier for me later on. But I think this game would be further up my top 100 if it lent into the aggression a bit more. Like I say, you prosper in this game by avoiding fights, and that just feels a little bit against the theme of the game. But in everything else, the theme comes through brilliantly. You've got prospects that are not quite full gang members yet, so they can't use guns in fights, but you can upgrade them to become gang members later on. You can camp out at the hospital so that someone else won't be able to come and rescue their injured gang members, and one of your gang members can take the fall. Basically, you can send them to prison to clear your heat so that the police are no longer worried about your gang. It's such an evocative theme that it makes this emergent narrative that you're crafting through everything you're doing in the game so much more appealing. This game doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Wise Guys, and it's about prohibition gangsters instead, but it still carries the same ideas, and I've played that game and I really like it as well. I just slightly prefer the original, and I've got expansion content for it, so that's why I've kept this. But if you want to play a game that sounds as I described, then Wise Guys is a great alternative, and it's the only one you can get. And number 55 is Caesar, a two-player only game where you're fighting for control of ancient Rome. One of you plays as Caesar, the other as Pompey, and you are placing your influence onto this map to try and win regions and claim control of Rome faster than the other player. What you're doing couldn't be simpler. You're just taking one of your influence tokens and placing it in an empty spot on the map. You place them on the borders between two regions, and so they're going to apply influence to two regions at once. And some will put a lot of influence in one region and nothing in another, others are a bit more balanced. But you're trying to surround these regions with more influence than your opponent, because when all of the spots on that border are filled up, that's when you score it, and the player with more influence gets to place one of their control markers on that region. So you're trying to use your tokens efficiently, gain as many regions as possible with the same resources as your opponent has. If you go really big on one region and completely outdo your opponent, then you're wasting all that strength. Much better to spread it around, try and get these marginal victories, because that's how you're going to keep your strength for later. But you can't always do what you want. You only have 2 tokens behind your shield, and if you don't have a boat, for example, then you can't play into the sea. What makes the game come alive are these special tokens. They will give you an extra turn, make your hand size bigger so you've got more options, or let you flip over an opponent's token so that it's no longer relevant in a battle. It's the clever use of these tokens and timing when to focus on getting certain powers that will really make the difference in this game. And what's crucial is that you don't get these tokens by winning a region, you get them by placing the last token in a region, by finishing it off, making it score. So it might not be you that wins that region, but if you can get the right special ability at the right time, it could totally turn the tide of victory in your favor. It means you've got to be constantly spotting opportunities, either to just nick a victory with one extra influence to control a region, or to claim a special token before the other player can get it. But while you'll be so focused on trying to get the special abilities you want, you have to be so wary about what your opponent is doing. Because if they win control of a region that's adjacent to one they already own, they get to place an extra control marker on the border between those regions. So instead of just putting 1 down, they get to put 2 down. It's double the victory. Because remember, you're racing to get rid of your control markers. And then if you win adjacent again, it's another one on the border. And it can really start to snowball. So many of these regions are next to each other. And so if you manage to claim one that is adjacent to 5 other regions that you already own, you get to place 5 extra control markers down on the board. And it's the same kind of snowball feeling with these Senate tokens. If you claim the region where that's in and get the token, you get to put another control marker under it. If you do it a second time, you get 2 under it, and a third time 3. So you can just see these tokens vanish from another player if you don't try to stop them from getting these snowball victories. The game has such a vicious curve to it. You start off taking your time, laying claim to different regions. You don't want to commit too soon on anything. But as soon as action starts to happen, it's happening so fast that you can't keep up with it all, and you're just trying to go that little bit faster than your opponent to win the game. It's over in a flash, and yet within that short time, you still get these delicious tactical decisions that you want from a game like this. This has everything I want from a 2-player game. It's super easy to get into, it gets straight to the point, and you're at each other's heads. You're desperately trying to lay claim to something before your opponent, but it's never aggressive. Instead, it is fiercely competitive, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. And number 54 is Llama, a brilliantly simple card game. You can play this with anyone, at any time, in any place. It's so versatile, and it's my favorite game to just play in the background. If you're meeting up with old friends and you're really gonna spend the whole night just chatting to each other, it's the perfect game to just kind of take your turn occasionally. It flows really smoothly. There's no complicated stoppages. You don't really have to communicate that much. There's very few games that I feel like can achieve that. But at the same time, it can be a social lubricant. It's giving you something to focus on. If you're hanging out with people that you don't really know that well, then Llama allows you to kind of focus on the game when you want, chat to each other when you want. It gives you that distraction that you might need sometimes if conversation is stilting. And the reason it's so good for that is because it's just so easy to learn and to play, and it just flows. On your turn, you're trying to get rid of a card. On the stack is a number, and you have to play the same number or higher. So I play a card, and then it's the next person's turn, and they have to play. And you keep going around, and you're just trying to get rid of your cards. But if you can't play a card, you can pick up off the deck. Like Uno, if you can't do anything, then you get punished for it. You're trying to get rid of your cards, so picking up cards is bad. But even though it has that casual flow of something like Uno, it still comes with interesting decisions. Because if you can't play a card, you can instead just pass out of the round. You're going to get negative points for the cards in your hand, but it means that things aren't going to get worse, because if you draw off the top of the deck and then you still can't get rid of any cards later on, then you've now got even more negative points at the end of the round. These are negative points, and once somebody gets to 40, the game ends and the person with the least wins the game. So bowing out the round is all about taking the punishment you can see, whereas if you draw off the deck, things could get even worse. And if you end up with a llama in your hand and the round ends, then that's 10 points that you're going to have to take from this pile. But the reason you might want to stay in, drawing a card and risking things getting worse, is because if you do eventually get rid of all your cards, the round immediately ends, everyone else gets stuck with what they've got left, and you get to get rid of one of your tokens. You get to lose these penalty points. And if you've got a 10 already, you can get rid of that. So it's taking you much closer to victory. It has those little satisfying moments of luck where the discard pile changes and you get to get rid of the card that you really want to. But it also has these more intelligent decisions that you are in control of your destiny to some extent. There's still a lot of luck in this game, but it will balance out through the rounds. And you have to ride that luck. Decide when do you cut your losses and think, no, I'm going to do better next round, versus when do you have that hubris to push on and think, no, I'm going to win this one. It's so high up in my top 100 because it just fits into the little cracks of my life and gets played so much more often than you think. You could be in a noisy bar, tired and drunk, and there'd still be room for a game of llama and you'd have a great time. At number 53 is K2, a game about climbing the mountain of K2 and possibly dying on the way. When I think about games that I really love, what comes up a lot are games that do a perfect thematic simulation of a specific situation and do it in such a streamlined way. And K2 is the perfect example of that. I'm not someone that enjoys climbing mountains in real life, but that's what I love about board games, that you get to experience something that you would never normally do from the comfort of your own home. You each have two climbers that you are sending up K2, trying to get them as close to the peak as possible. The further up the mountain you'll get them, the more points you'll get. But it's going to be a challenge to even get close, and the other climbers are getting in your way as well. The way you move is by playing movement cards. So every round you will pick 3 cards to play, and they will allow you to move certain spaces. The further up the mountain you get, the harder it is to climb up to spaces. So to get to the top, I'm going to need like 3 movement points just to move 1 space, whereas at the bottom, you can move much more quickly. You're also going to need to worry about your acclimatization, because you've got a health track for each of your climbers. You need to keep them acclimatized with the cold weather, or otherwise they're going to die. And as you get further up, they get these like red acclimatization points that are going to take their acclimatization down. So you need to be taking your time to acclimatize yourself by using these cards. They are like your health resources. If you don't do enough of that and you end up staying in the wrong places for too long, then your climbers will just die. They will be eliminated from the game. You won't score points for them. And you've also got to reckon with the weather. So you've got the weather forecast for the next 6 days. You can see what's coming up. You know how bad it's going to be in different altitudes. So if it's going to be really bad at the peak, now might not be a good time to plan your ascent. You can also time when to use your climbers. You could send one straight up to the peak using all your resources to get them climbing as fast as possible, while the other one just chills out and looks after themselves. And then the other one goes up later. Or you can kind of send them up in tandem, because you've also got tents that you can place. You can use some of your climbing points to place a tent on the board. It's fixed, and only you and your climbers can use it. So you can use it on the way up and just stay there, and that will help you with your acclimatization. Or you can get it on the way back down, because once you go to the peak, you're going to be really unhealthy. And so you need something to be able to keep yourself alive, because it's absolutely possible to reach the peak before the end of the game and then die on your way back down. I mean, that's also possible in real life as well. The reason you might die on the way back down is because there's only enough space on this mountain for a certain number of climbers, and the paths narrow as you get closer to the peak. So if you're at the top and someone comes to the space below you, you won't be able to move until they get out of your way. And yet they're there because they're trying to get to the peak above you and they can't move either. I really love that player interaction because you've got to watch the paths the other players are taking. If there's going to be a bottleneck on one side of the mountain, then you better take the long way round and go the other way, because otherwise it could end up killing you. It encourages you to zig when other players zag. Maybe you take the risk and brave the really cold weather because the mountain's going to be completely clear for a while whilst everyone else is being a coward at the bottom. And yet the game puts in some potential traps for risk takers. Every round, you will pick your cards in secret and reveal them. The player that moves the most movement points will get hit with a negative token that actually hinders their abilities that round. So the game is such a fine balance to stay alive. You've got to time it right when to go up the mountain in terms of the weather and the other players. You've got a limited resources in terms of your good movement cards, so sometimes you just won't be able to move when you desperately need to. You have to juggle all of those things into your decision making every round, and it's such an exciting experience because your characters could literally die. There's very few games where you have this level of jeopardy. If one or even both of your characters die, you're gonna be done. So it puts such an importance in the decisions you make, and it's also thematic too. I just love it. And number 52 is Quinto, which is my favorite travel game to take on holiday. It's one of the original roll and write games, and by far my favorite. It's the only one in my top 100, because it distills down what I think made those games great in the first place. You are rolling dice that everyone is using, and you're all simultaneously writing on one of these sheets. So you're all playing with the same results. You're all sort of given the same stuff, and you've got to best use it to your advantage to do better than everyone else. And because you're all using the same results, you're all playing at the same time, it means the game moves quickly. It means that you have this shared frustration at what dice are getting rolled, and there's this race to get your sheet finished before another player. When the dice get rolled, you add them up, and that number needs to go on your sheet in one of the 3 rows. So there are 3 different colors, and if you've rolled all 3 dice, you can put it in any of the rows. The numbers are going to go in ascending order, and you are just trying to fill these rows up. If you roll a number that won't fit on the sheet, you go bust for that round, and you take -5 points. If you get -20 points, you fill that up, that's it, the game ends. So where you write your numbers is crucial. You have to try and leave yourself space for other numbers that are going to come up later. Your desire is to want to be really ambitious. If you leave space for high numbers, then that means you're more likely to get big points at the end of the game. But you'll only get those points if you complete your row, and you're not going to be able to fill in big numbers because they're much less likely to be rolled when you roll these 3 dice. You're much more likely to roll the numbers in the middle that aren't going to get you as many points. So when you're starting off, you've got this blank sheet, your world's your oyster, and you're so keen to get the stuff, you don't really think about probability, and you put yourself in tricky situations later on by leaving space for high numbers that just never come up. So every time someone rolls, everyone's like desperately hoping that something big comes up that's going to fill those gaps, finish off a row, and get you closer to the end of the game. Because if you finish a row, you score the points for the number at the end. So if you put like a 15 at the end, that's 15 points. If you don't finish a row, at the end of the game, it's only worth a point for every single space that you've filled. It's not just about the rows, you've also got these special spaces. The number that you write in there, you get that many points if you manage to fill the column that it's in. Because these rows, they line up with each other. And it's like Sudoku, you can't have the same number in a column more than once. So the way you are writing out the numbers, you have to be really careful. And again, it's another problem that means you will roll a number and then not be able to place it on your sheet and go bust. And how do you get the smaller numbers if you're rolling 3 dice? Well, on your turn, you get to decide which dice to roll. So you can just roll 1 dice, get a 3, and that's going to allow you to fill up lower down. But it's risky because there's only 6 different numbers you can get, And now you're locked into this color. If I'm rolling purple, it has to go in the purple row. So I have to get exactly what I need. The way they use the dice makes it all about playing the odds. And every little rule just adds to it. Because on your turn, you roll the dice, you have to write a number down. If you can't, then you go bust. But when it's someone else's turn to roll the dice, you don't have to take that number. Most of the time you want to because you're kind of racing to finish your sheet. And so numbers are good to make that happen. But if numbers are coming up that are just difficult, they're going to cause you problems later, then maybe you wait. You don't take it now because you might end up rolling that on your turn and having to take it. And then the other brilliant thing about the game is that you always get a reroll. If it's your turn, you roll them once, you don't like it, you can re-roll one time. You have to take the second roll. And so as the other people watching, you're hoping that they re-roll a lot because you want a better number. You also might be hoping that they re-roll because it sends them bust. And it's just such a tough decision. You might think, this number could be better, and then re-roll and then get something even worse. Quinto's always been a hard sell. It doesn't look inspiring. It's themeless. It's just a bit of paper with some numbers on it. But I promise you, it's one of the best dice games that I own, and just a game that I'm always excited to play every time I go on holiday because it packs so much into so little. And number 51 is Word Slam, which is one of my favorite party games that's all about guessing words. So you play on two teams, and on each team is a clue giver, and they are both given the same word. So it could be Jaws, the film, or lumberjack. And then they each have a deck of these really basic words that they can communicate with, and they put these words on their card holders to show to their team. And meanwhile, the other clue giver is doing the exact same thing with the exact same deck of word cards. For their team, they are racing to get the answer first, but they have the same tools. So you've got these decks of nouns, there's like directions, there's adjectives, and there's verbs. But it's a very limited communication pool. So for example, to try and do lumberjack, this team has got man, do, wood, divided. You can't talk. All you can do is play these cards out. You can sort of move the cards around a bit, and your teammates can start guessing. And one of the great things about this game is because both teams are guessing at the same time, and they're shouting out guesses, like you would in like Pictionary, the other team can hear those guesses and allow that to inform their guessing. So it's almost like they're collaborating with each other, but they're also like fierce rivals. So you get good at this game. You don't want to blurt out too much because your clue giver might have given you different words than the other team. So for example here, another take on lumberjack might be job, green brown plant, dead. So the green brown plant, at that point he hasn't seen the word wood in the deck. I love the tension that adds, that the other team is trying to get the exact same thing as you in real time. You're racing against each other. There's very few party games that do this kind of word guessing thing in that way. I mean, there will be ones that are like against a timer, but usually you're just trying to get there on your own or as a group. In this, you are playing against another team, and it just creates this dynamic that I don't have in many party games, and I just think is really brilliant. In a lot of ways, that's the magic of Word Slam, and sometimes I think it would be interesting to try it with other party games, like with Concept, that you play with two different boards, so you can't see what clues the other team is receiving. Because when the other team are blurting out guesses, you're not just getting clues from it, but you're also like freaking out because it seems like they're getting closer than you are, or you're looking at your words and you're thinking, why on earth are they saying that? It doesn't make any sense with what clues we're getting. Like so many of these games, for the clue guessers, it has this amazing thing of just clicking at the right moment. You will be staring blankly at these cards for like a minute, trying all these different things. You feel like you're not close, and then you just finally see it all click together like the Matrix, and you get it, and it feels so good to have cracked the case. And one of the best bits is to get to the end and reveal the different clues that the team had, because you will always find that each clue giver was using a different set of words. They were coming about it in a slightly different way. And that's what's just so clever about these cards. Like, it's very simple things. You know, you've got politics, woman, time, building, and then old and bad and white and grey and loud and heavy. Like, it's just very simple ideas that somehow you gotta piece together to make something useful. Especially when you play with the harder words. Once you've done a few rounds of the green deck, you can have words like Martin Luther King Jr., grandfather clock, Mississippi River, and suddenly the round becomes a lot longer as you try to get all of that across. But it is possible, and as the clue giver, it's a really fun challenge trying to find a way to communicate with these very basic tools. It's another game that I feel has been unfairly overlooked, maybe because of the name and how it looks. It just doesn't look as fun as it actually is when you get to playing it. And for me, the box is just way too big for a party game. You need something that you can take to someone's house. Now, there is Word Sam Family, which is basically the same game in a smaller box, but I do really like these card holders. They're kind of a crucial aspect of the game just for ease of use and just for all of your team to be able to see the cards, but without the other team seeing them. I haven't been playing as many party games in the last few years, so this one, along with a lot of others, has dropped quite a lot down my top 100, but it is still one of my favourite party games of all time. That was part 5 of my top 100 board games. If you want to buy any of them, there are links below. And to see the rest of this series, please subscribe to the channel. And you can get exclusive videos of mine by signing up on Patreon. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching.